Most of you who've studied 2 Corinthians 12, first 4 verses, may recall that Paul recounts an event that occurred in his life that he describes only very briefly. It impacted him enough that he remembers it after 14 years, the event he recalls. He first describes it as if it happened to somebody else, but you quickly realize that's just his way of putting it in the third person. It's really himself that he's talking about. Whether I was in the body or out of the body, I don't know. He had some kind of rapture experience that he got into and came out of, and he makes reference to that. In August of 2014, I got up in the middle of the night. I'm at that age level. Yes, I'm $79.95 plus shipping and handling. Okay. Which means I have, what do you call it, prosthetic sleep. In other words, I typically sleep 2 hours at a time. Okay? And that's just part of the lifestyle of someone that's old and decrepit, you know. So I'm used to getting up for about 2 hours, relieving the bladder, going back to bed. And that's the way I sequence myself. And that's just part of, it's usually 2-3 hours at the most. Well, it was one of those mornings. It was 4 a.m. I got up, went to the convenience, and then as I often do, I'll stop by the kitchen for a glass of orange juice or a glass of something before going back to bed. Okay? And I did just that. I stopped, had a little glass of orange juice, and I'm on my way back in the hallway to my bedroom when I experienced what I presumed was a stroke. I was really captured. But it was a strange experience. It wasn't frightening. It wasn't bad. I found it exciting. Something's going on. To be honest with you, I thought I had a stroke and died. I mean, I thought it was that severe, and yet I thought, wow, is this the other side? It was a positive thing. I know that sounds strange. I'm just being candid with you. It's just really what... As I experienced that, I realized something was going on. In retrospect, I'm convinced that it was an interdimensional transfer of some kind. But what was interesting, I immediately knew certain things. I knew I was not young or old. I knew I had no age. I didn't ask a question and have an answer. In fact, I didn't see anything or hear anything through the experience. But I did have immediate transfers. Those are things that I didn't have to ask, I knew. And I also got instruction. It's very vivid to me. That's why one of the reasons I'm bringing this up. I don't know how many of you are sailors, how many sail or use ships. As you know, I'm Naval Academy. And so those idioms are familiar to me for a lot of reasons. What I had impressed on me is steady as she goes. Hold the course. Okay? In other words, take advantage of a deep keel. To put it, these are all terms that would be immediately imputed in seamanship terms. As I'm absorbing that, and by the way, the whole experience was not negative. It was very, in fact, when it finally ends, I felt disappointed. I frankly was fascinated in trying to analyze what on earth is going on. It's not the rapture. I had all these hypotheses. I was just experiencing. When it was all over, I'm standing in the hallway, And I hadn't made it to my bedroom yet. I didn't lay down. I wasn't dreaming. I turned back to the kitchen I'd just come from, and there was my little glass on the counter where I had obviously drunk some orange juice. And I was really so stunned by the experience that I made 2 phone calls, middle of the night. One of them was to Dr. William Welty, who I regard as the greatest living exegete alive today in Hebrew and Greek. And he's a very close friend, and he's on my board. I shared with him what happened, and he had his immediate analysis for it. He confirmed what I was suspected. He also answered, one reason I called him, I was familiar with 2 Corinthians 12 verses, where it says that Paul speaks of that experience, and he makes reference to words that it's not lawful to utter. Strange, in the King James, it's a strange passage. And I suspected that may be a marginal translation. That's another reason I wanted to get Williams, what does the ISV say, kind of question. And he came right back at me, no, what it really says is communication without the encumbrance of language. It's a little different sense in the actual Greek as it's picked up in the King James. And also another one of I called Brian Hughes. These two are close intimates on my board. And they both all had the same analysis. I obviously sat down with a pad and wrote down everything I could think of that I had experienced and what happened while it was all fresh in my mind. And as you can probably gather, I've gone double back on this many times since. For a number of reasons, I don't speak about it. There's probably less than 5 people alive today that know the story, because we just felt that it seemed more appropriate to keep it very private. Partly because it can be easily misunderstood and whatever. So, however, there's another reason that's emerged in our thinking that causes me to take the liberty of trying to share this with you a little bit without getting into the subtleties of it. It has stunned us on the board, because my board members, obviously, among those intimates of what I'm talking about, because we realize that it's not many ministries that have the benefit of an overt confirmation. Because basically what was being said was, hold the course. Don't deviate from the course that you're on.